Welcome back. It's Thursday, February 2nd, and today we're going to do some reflection. No, this isn't a therapy session. On today's show, we're going to look back at this NFL season, the great moments, the not so great moments, and of course, we're going to look into the future as well, including all the head coaching changes, the Pro Bowl, and of course, the Super Bowl. It's going to be a news-filled show today. This is your early reminder to drop a like on the podcast, on the stream, whatever you want to call it. Subscribe to the channel, as the support has been amazing the last 10 episodes or so. You guys have been killing it, and that's an understatement. But we also don't have the subscribers lined up with the views. So if you like what you're hearing and you just forgot, go ahead and hit that big red button down below. But also, big announcement, turn those post notifications on because next week we're going to have some fan-involved shows. Shows that you guys can possibly get involved in. So be on the lookout for that. But hopefully everyone's happy and healthy. Without further ado, welcome to the Anomaly Podcast. I'm your host, Owen Stiftar. Let's get into the NFL news. The first thing we're going to cover is the NFL scripted? I'm going to let you guys get your laughs out for a sec, and then we'll get into this. But Arian Foster, former running back for the Houston Texans, played in the early 2010s, but he created some controversy on a podcast this past Tuesday. He claimed that the NFL is rigged and that players receive scripts before their games and really in training camp. While it's difficult for me to believe that he's being serious at all, he certainly had a crazy backstory regarding how the NFL managed their games. And his exact quote goes as follows. Every year we used to get a script. Day one of training camp, it would get dropped off at our locker. We were really dedicated to it. So it was more so like what practice was about. It was about practicing the script. Like, this is what's going to go on, and this is what we have to do. It was almost like WWF. So we know what was going to happen, but we still had to go out there and put on a show. End of quotation. But I really hope he's joking, because if he is serious, if Arian Foster is serious, one, we have to look into him for CTE, right? But two, this is nothing but a relevancy trip to me. This is a don't forget about me moment. This is a don't forget about me thing to do, because he had 3 or 4 good years, but he's been irrelevant pretty much ever since, right? I do want to say on a complete side note, that on a funny, not funny, dark humor side of things, the internet took the headline of what Arian Foster said about NFLs scripting their games, and they did what they did best. The internet ran with it. They went to the absolute extreme with the memes and everything you can imagine. I'm not going to mention the exact players in the videos that I saw, but I'm just going to give you a hint. Just imagine any player in NFL history that did something horrible on or off the field, and the NFL claimed, or the internet claimed, that these players were just following the script the NFL gave them. Aaron Hernandez, right? That's one of them, right? But it's very much dark humor. But what else do you expect from the internet, right? What else can you possibly expect from other people that are just trying to be funny? But Demeco Ryans is next. The Houston Texans, I don't know what the Texans are, but the Houston Texans, they have one less problem after they made a home run hire, in my opinion, at the head coach position with Demeco Ryans. I believe he signed a 6-year deal as the head coach of this team per Adam Schefter. But Demeco Ryans, he's only 38. He's going to be the second youngest coach in the NFL behind Sean McVay. And he's previously been the defensive coordinator for the Niners this past season, who the Niners were first in points allowed and yards allowed per game. They had the number 1 defense in the NFL, and it was a big reason why the Niners got that far, was because of Demeco Ryans. But prior to becoming the coach, Demeco Ryans is a former player. He played in the NFL for about 10 years at the linebacker position, and 6 of those years, were with the Texans. From 2006 to 2011, he was the Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2006, and he was named to 2 Pro Bowl teams in his time with Houston. He's definitely the invite back, right? It definitely is going to mean something for Demeco Ryans. But his first task, because there's a lot of questions regarding this Texans team's future. But the first thing Demeco Ryans has to the first domino that has to fall, the first thing he has to accomplish is he has to decide what is he going to do in this upcoming draft. The Texans have the number 2 overall pick. Do they trade up to get a quarterback? Do they trade up to number 1 with the Chicago Bears, who don't need a quarterback? And do the Texans go up and get Bryce Young? Or do they stay put at 2 and either hope Bryce Young doesn't get taken, or do they go a different route and say, let's take C.J. Stroud? Or there's always a possibility that they trade back up into the first round and get a guy like Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. There's a lot of questions that Demeco Ryans has to figure out with this Texans team. Regardless of what they do, they need to execute this first milestone in the rebuild. And I believe a top 1 or 2 pick can be a game changer for your franchise. I really hope they get Bryce Young. I believe that would be a great fit. But, again, I'm not in the front office. I'm not the one seeing the trades on the table. We'll have to see what Demeco Ryans can do as the head coach of the Houston Texans. Speaking of new head coaches, we have Sean Payton, who is the new head coach of the Denver Broncos. If the biggest question here, the biggest story here, I guess, is can Sean Payton revive Russell Wilson? If Russell Wilson is going to cook again, his famous saying, trading for Sean Payton, the Denver Broncos, it was the only reasonable option, in my opinion. But the Broncos, if you're not sure, if you're like, wait, what? A head coach can get traded? Basically, if a head coach retires before the end of their contract with a team, if they decide to come back and that contract is still up, right? If it's still, if they're still getting paid from that contract, they would have to get traded if they would like to coach a different team. It's only happened a couple times in NFL history. I know Bill Belichick has been traded, Rex Ryan has been traded, and now Sean Payton also has been traded. And the Broncos, they traded their 2023 first-round pick, which is really Miami's first-round pick because they acquired it in the Bradley Chubb trade. But they also traded a second-round pick next year to the Saints for Sean Payton. So first and second for a new head coach. They're going to be operating under the assumption that Russell Wilson is still a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, and it's not going to be the subpar version of Russ that we saw in 2022. Even if Russell Wilson is even if he's not at his peak, I think Sean Payton still might be able to manufacture a decent offense around Russell Wilson and whatever injuries this offense may suffer, right? Because you remember when Drew Brees and Sean Payton's time in New Orleans. Look, Drew Brees is my favorite quarterback of all time, but in his later years, he was very much he was on the decline, right? We'll put it that way. And his arm strength was none, right? He didn't have much arm strength at all. And that's when Michael Thomas had over 100 and something catches. He set the catch record because Sean Payton was able to dial up all these plays for Drew Brees to be effective, even though he was playing like a 50-year-old at the quarterback position, right? I don't know if Russell Wilson is fixable. And, many would be quick to agree with that. All I'm going to say is give this team a couple months to work together. Give this team maybe even a year to work together, because it does typically take time for a new quarterback and coach to both be effective at the same time. It takes time for them to mesh, that adjustment period that we always talk about. But give them about a year to work. I believe Russ will be fixed. I guess, a lot of the decision making errors that he had last season, or I guess that he was late to make these decisions, I believe Sean Payton can simplify the offense if need be. He can fix Russ. I mean, that's got to be a big reason why Sean Payton took the job in Denver. In my opinion, I believe he is fixable. Sean Payton, one of the best coaches of all time, one of my favorite coaches of all time. He's going to fix Russ. This Broncos team, I'm not going to say is going to be a Super Bowl contender, right? But they're definitely going to be way better than they did last year. I expect them to make the playoffs next season. Next up, we're going to talk about the GOAT, Tom Brady. He announced his retirement for the second time this past Wednesday, I believe. But his first retirement that he announced was on February 1st, 2022. He announced his second retirement yesterday, which coincidentally was February 1st again but 2023 this time. But this time, I believe the 3-time MVP, Tom Brady, the GOAT, I think it's for good. I think this is his final goodbye to the NFL, feet in the sand. There's no coming back for Tom Brady, right? I will say there's no question Tom Brady is the greatest football player to ever play the game. He's the best player to ever grace the game that we all know and love. He has countless accolades. I mean, just to name a few, he's a 7-time Super Bowl champion, 5-time Super Bowl MVP, 15 Pro Bowl selections, 3 MVP awards in the regular season, 2 NFL Offensive Player of the Year honors. I mean, he's won multiple Super Bowls. He won 6 with New England. He left New England. People thought he was done. People thought he should have retired in 2019. What does he do? No, he does what a GOAT would do. He leaves to Tampa, and he wins yet again another Super Bowl, and in dominating fashion at that. Tom Brady, amazing. I mean, I didn't even mention the fact that he has the most regular season completions, passing yards, passing touchdowns in NFL history. Tom Brady's the GOAT. No questions asked. It's going to be a long time before someone can pass him. If Pat Mahomes wants his case, he's going to have to win this Super Bowl here on the 12th. But Lamar Jackson next. I mean, we're just going to cover the latest on him as questions are still circulating around the Ravens organization on if Lamar Jackson's going to return next season. The likely thing to happen, and the betting favorite to happen, is that the Ravens are going to franchise tag Lamar Jackson for about $45 million next season, and then he'll be set to become an unrestricted free agent if a deal isn't done by the end of next season, right? But on the flip side, if the Ravens were to do right by Lamar, right? If Lamar says he doesn't want to come back, if his agent and him decide it's best to go elsewhere, Lamar would become a free agent if he weren't to be traded. And that raises the question, where does Lamar Jackson go, right? I looked it up. The 2 betting favorites right now are the New York Jets, which is, I can see it, and the Atlanta Falcons, which I can't see at all. But if he were to test free agency, it would be very interesting to see what a player of Lamar Jackson's caliber would do. We know whatever happens, I just hope Lamar Jackson is paid the money he deserves, because even though he's had injury concerns throughout his career and his play style warrants that, when he's on the field, his team wins the majority of their games. And let's not forget, this man here was almost a unanimous MVP just a couple seasons ago. Lamar Jackson is a top 5 talent when he's healthy. He's a top 10 quarterback in the league today. Let's not underestimate the talent of Lamar Jackson going forward. I just hope that he gets the money right and he's done right by his team, whether if that's returning or if he tests elsewhere. Brock Purdy, he's suffered a torn UCL and he is going to be out for 6 months. Even though he did return in that game after Josh Johnson stepped in and had a concussion, Brock Purdy, they ran the ball every play because he could not put any pressure on his elbow, and he had to hand the ball off every single play. It's very unfortunate to see a Niners team like that, who was so great all season long, but they get to the Super Bowl, and everything just falls apart. Or they get to the NFC title game, and then everything falls apart. They've had 3 different quarterback injuries. I guess 4 now with Josh Johnson. You can't make that stuff up. And I really feel bad for Kyle Shanahan, because the way he was coaching, he deserved the Super Bowl. Everything fell apart. But the rookie sensation, Brock Purdy, he suffered a complete tear in his elbow. As of now, the hope is that he can avoid the Tommy John surgery, which, should Purdy manage to avoid the common baseball surgery, where it's been known to knock out pitchers for well over a year at his time, right? But if he's able to avoid that surgery, he could come back in time for the 49ers training camp. And insiders believe the current plan is for Purdy to be sidelined for about 6 months. In my opinion, I expect Trey Lance to be back as the starter for the 49ers next season. But that's going to lead to some controversy, because if Trey Lance, he comes back off that knee injury, and if he needs time to adjust to the system, adjust to playing at the highest level, or if he has some mishaps, maybe a bad game or two to start the year, fans are going to be begging for Brock Purdy to step back in. They're going to be begging for him to come back and I guess have another magical run with the Niners team next season. It's going to be very interesting to see what will happen, but it's a good problem to have if you're the 49ers. Will they go Trey Lance, Brock Purdy? I'm expecting Trey Lance, but anything is on the table for the 49ers. NFL free agency. It's going to begin March 15th at 4 o'clock p.m. That's when free agency starts, and when free agency starts, that also marks the beginning of the next season, and that's going to be March 15th is going to be the day I come on this podcast and I say, Browns are going to the Super Bowl, right? Obviously, I'm joking, but in today's world of player empowerment, they have the power to pretty much do whatever they want, no matter what their contract says. It doesn't matter what the sport is. In the era of player empowerment, free agency is always the most exciting time of the year, whether if it's soccer, WNBA, NBA, football, baseball. Players can go anywhere, right? You can't really expect anything to be a guarantee, right? But, it's exciting for reasons, right? The reasons are because you get to see who stays, who leaves, who gets traded, right? Either early in their deal or if they're on the last deal of their contract or last year of their contract. You get to see a lot of stuff happen, a lot of player movement, and there's a lot that can go down in once free agency starts, right? I mean, this year the Bears have over $100 million to spend. It'll be interesting to see how much of that they do spend, because a team like last year, the Jacksonville Jaguars had over $100 million to spend. They spent a lot of it. They got a new coach, and look at them. They got all the way to the second round of the playoffs. Though we don't have physical football in front of us, free agency is still going to be fun to keep up with. We're going to be able to see teams possibly turn their franchises around or turn them upside down, right? So it's going to be fun to see. I can't wait for March 15th. Notable moments from this season. I mentioned in the intro, we're going to reflect on this season and a lot of the great moments that we did have. The first thing that came to mind was Justin Jefferson. In the week 11 game or something like that, the Vikings played the Buffalo Bills, two powerhouses at the time, and the game went to overtime after the Vikings made a late game comeback. But Justin Jefferson, in that late game comeback, he had a game-saving one-handed catch, diving backwards. It was like a makeshift Odell catch. It was one of the best catches I've ever seen. That's one of the best moments for sure, right? But the Vikings, another great moment for the Vikings. They pulled off the biggest comeback in NFL history of 33 points, right? That was against Jeff Saturday. That was in his second or third game, and we were like, hey, maybe Jeff Saturday figured something out. Nope. The Vikings pulled off the biggest comeback in NFL history. And then Chandler Jones, he saved the day for the Las Vegas Raiders after the Patriots mishaps. We know the fumble that happened, crazy moment, unpatriotic, unpatriot-like of Ramondre Stevenson and Jacoby Myers. But if you don't remember, the Patriots were up late in that game, and they were tied up. They were tied up with the Las Vegas Raiders, and Ramondre Stevenson took the ball up the middle and he lateraled it back to Jacoby Myers, the receiver for the Patriots. Jacoby Myers tried to throw it all the way back to Mac Jones, but Chandler Jones caught the ball. He's a player for the Raiders, and he went into the end zone, and on one of the craziest endings in NFL history, he won that game for the Raiders. Also, who can forget the Lions' Cinderella run? I mean, Dan Campbell, after week 4, he pretty much came to the podium and admitted he knew he was going to be fired after this season. But then, hey, they were 1-6 or 1-7. They go on a 6 or 7 game winning streak. They make it very interesting. They did fall short at the end, but it was a great Cinderella run. Everybody was rooting for the Lions to make a playoff appearance, but their drought continued. Tyreek, he proved he didn't need Mahomes, and vice versa. Mahomes proved that he doesn't need Tyreek. And one of the best dynamic duos we've seen in years. They were separated this past offseason when Tyreek was traded to the Dolphins, but Tyreek had a career year. Mahomes had a career year aside from touchdowns. Mahomes might win another Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill, who's a top 5 receiver in football. It's very cool to see both of these star players separate, and they don't necessarily need each other. Where on the flip side, we saw a duo like Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers split up, and it looks like they both desperately need each other, right? Even though they're both very talented players. And then the final, to finish it off for this season, we just talked about it earlier. Tom Brady played his last game, right? I put a question mark there because it's Tom Brady, right? We never know, that football urge is going to get to him, and he might come back one day. But as of right now, what we know is that Tom Brady's retired, and when the GOAT retires in any sport, it's a big deal. Tom Brady just retired. Props to him, right? Props to him. But it was a great season, right? And we still have possibly the biggest game of the year on the horizon. We have the Super Bowl coming up, which I'm hoping for a banger of a game. I'm hoping for a classic, right? But usually most years it doesn't turn out that way, right? But for my favorite moment of the year, it's not on that screen, but my favorite moment from this season is actually off the field. And it goes without question as a biased Browns fan. It was March 18th of 2022 when it all looked dim. When the Browns fans were once in the running for this quarterback, they were told by that quarterback that they were out of the running. The Cleveland Browns, they pulled off a miracle. They ended up trading for Deshaun Watson. Sure, Deshaun Watson, he had some drama around his name. And sure, we knew he was going to miss a lot of time this season and possibly change our season, right? But on paper, we know we just got a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. For a franchise we've always been clowned for never being able to figure out that quarterback position. And we may just have. Let's not forget, Watson is an amazing quarterback. Whether if it was at Clemson or his early years in Houston, he's always been a game-changing top 5, top 10 quarterback in the NFL. He's a top 5 talent at the position, I would say at best. And I say it all the time on this show. I believe an elite quarterback can change whether you're an underperforming team or a team that overperforms. Look, I get it. Watson did not look like the $260 million we paid him this season, or, in his contract. But this year, even though he showed tons of rust, that's expected when you don't play for 800 days in the professionals. But now we get to see what we really have in him next season, and I couldn't be happier. As I mentioned, March 15th comes around. Browns fans, we're going to start to get excited again. We're gonna get our delusion up yet again for another season. It happens every year. It's a tradition. But my favorite moment, we traded for Deshaun Watson after he came out and said that we were out of the running. And it really shocked us, especially giving up only draft capital, which with an elite quarterback like this, shouldn't matter too much. But I still can't really believe we have Deshaun Watson, right? But the Pro Bowl takes place this Sunday at around 3 o'clock Eastern. But it will be the National Football League's all-star game, quote-unquote, for the 2022 season. For the first time ever, this event, I believe it's going to consist of multiple skills competitions like we see every year, maybe a dodgeball game, but it's going to be highlighted by a 7-on-7 non-contact flag football game rather than the traditional tackle football game that we would get in years past. I believe this is the NFL's attempt to get more people to actually care about the Pro Bowl, as throughout the years with player safety and the injury concerns and the CTE concerns, this game's been taken less and less serious, right? Less tackling in that game, and less people have tuned in to this game because it isn't played how it used to be, right? I do believe we forget as fans why this weekend and why this game was implemented in the first place. It's to celebrate and congratulate the best players that we have in the game. It's not to possibly injure them, right? So even though the game has always been fun, I think we forget why Pro Bowl and why the All-Star game in the NBA was implemented in the first place. It is to congratulate and celebrate the players we have, not to injure them, right? To make that point again. I wanted to get that through to you guys. But that is also why the NFL is changing it this year. They understand that there's not much football going on the last couple years in the Pro Bowl, so they changed it to the flag football route. And I think it could be very interesting. I'm not expecting much, in all honesty. I mean, it's the Pro Bowl. But I have watched the Pro Bowl every year because it is football. And every year when the Pro Bowl comes on, we know we only have 2 weeks left in the season, right? I'm just hoping we see tons of trick plays, tons of one-on-one balls with the elite and star wide receivers and defensive backs we have in this league. I will be interested to see how they implement the linemen in this game, if at all, right? I'm assuming they're going to have some type of kicking competitions for the special teams guys, but for a game like the Pro Bowl, if it's flag football oriented, I'm interested to see how they'll implement the linemen if it's only 7-on-7, which is a game that's typically played without offensive linemen, right, or defensive linemen. Super Bowl coverage is going to take place not this Sunday, but next on February 12th. We typically use these Thursdays, if you're new around here, to cover the upcoming week of football. The upcoming Thursday and Sunday games of that week. But as most of us know, we don't have a regulated football game this week. We have a 7-on-7 exhibition game, which is the Pro Bowl that we just talked about. But with that being said, I did want to let you guys know that we will be covering this game sometime next week. To no one's surprise, we're going to cover the Super Bowl on this channel. And right now, I believe the logical date for me to cover the Super Bowl will be next Tuesday, as the trade deadline, is next Thursday, which I may go live for. So be on the lookout for that on my socials. But either next Tuesday or Thursday, we'll be covering the Super Bowl. I believe I already have my pick. I believe I know who I'm going to pick on the podcast for you guys. It may be the favorite. I don't know what the betting line says right now, but I believe I'm set in stone on who I'm going to select for the Pro Bowl game. But we'll have to see, man. We'll have to see. It's going to be two very high-powered offenses. I'll say 1.5 good defenses, right? The Chiefs' defense, sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. But Philly is definitely the more complete team. They're more inexperienced, right? At least at the important positions like quarterback and receiver and running back, like the skill positions, we'll say, right? But we'll have to see. I mean, KC's been there 3 of the last 4 years now, and it's the Kelce Bowl, right? Which Kelce's going to want it more? Jason Kelce for the Eagles or Travis Kelce for the Chiefs? There's a lot that we have to take in and consider making the decision for the game, but I think I'm set in stone. That is actually going to do it for today's show. On Tuesday, I know I released a very long episode. It was over an hour and 10 minutes or so. But actually, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I mean, the numbers are crazy right now. It was a 2 out of 10 on YouTube. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the show today. It is only going to be short, 28 minutes or so. And with that being said, I do actually want to take a moment to thank you guys for the support over the last 10 shows or so, as we have over 100 views on 8 of the last 10 episodes or so. You guys have been finding my content. You guys have been killing it with the support on my content. You guys have been truly amazing. It's really added motivation to show up every week and bring you guys 2 shows of the latest and greatest sports news. But if you enjoyed the show, I will say that. Drop a like if you guys enjoyed what you're listening to. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and turn those notifications on, because we do have something coming up next week. We might be going live next Thursday for the NBA trade deadline, but stay tuned for all of that. I will see you guys next Tuesday, which, again, I'm assuming will be my Super Bowl coverage episode, but we'll have to see. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy, enjoy your weekend. I know there's a bug going around right now, so stay healthy, right? Wash your hands, wear a mask if you need to. But with all that being said, stay happy, stay healthy. I'm out. I'll see you guys on Tuesday.